Specifically, let's have a look at the third page. Look, if you want a low pass, all you need to do is basically show me a list of entries from the database. Yeah. But then if you go to the next category, 52 to 58%, it says users should be able to list a summary of all placements in the database and should be able to see more details about a specific placement by clicking on an automatically generated link provided for each placement. This is exactly what we're going to look at today. One last thing before I start with the new content. Who here is using PHP Storm? Yeah. Is it only though you two? Nobody else is using PHP Storm? Okay, I'll skip it then because I already told you about it. You know, a kind of if you run your own local host on your own machine and you want to connect to the database, you need to tell me, because by default our database only accepts requests from our web server. So if you want to send requests to our database from your own machine, I need to change something. But I think I already mentioned that last week. Okay, so if you are selling things, in our example here for the handout, we are selling books, or in this case, in the case of the big assignment, we are providing placements. We usually have some sort of storefront where we have an overview of all the products and people can then pick specific things. Yeah. Let's have a look. I just clicked on an auto trader. Just takes a while to open up. Okay, here we are. Okay. Yeah. What kind of car do we want to buy? You tell me. Ferrari. Okay. Any specific model? No. No? Any will do. Yeah. As long as it's a Ferrari. Okay. So so this is this is UCLAN's postcode PR12HE, and we only want Ferraris within 50 miles. Otherwise, we got to travel so far. No. Where do I press to get a list of all the cars? Here. Okay. So here are all the cars. Yeah. So here's this Ferrari 360, Ferrari 360, Ferrari 612. So I basically have an overview of different cars here. And here for an overview, but I don't see all the details about this car. So I've got an overview. Let me zoom out. Then maybe it's a bit easier to get my point. So here are all the different cars. And if I want a specific one now, let's say I want this one, what do I do? I want more details about this specific Ferrari. What do I do? Click the link. Click the link, yeah. Look, and now I get more details about the car here. So we want something like that for our example. So we want something like that for our bookstore, and if you want a good grade for your main assignment, you want something like this for the placements. So we want one PHP page that will just use the code I've shown you a few weeks ago, that gives you all the books. We just run the SQL query, select star from books, and it gives us all the books. And then we were running a PHP loop to display the books one by one. First book, second book, third book, fourth book, fifth book, and so on. And now if I click on one specific book, I want to go to a separate PHP page. So let's say I click on the book with the ID 7. Yeah. Then I open a new PHP page. Let me write some text here. If it works, sometimes it ends up being somewhere else. So does it work today? Yeah. List all. Yeah, and here we got show one. Yeah. Okay. Oh, come on. Yeah. So here's our code that will list all the books. You've already seen the code that makes this happen. Now all we need to do is when we generate the line for each book, we just need to wrap it in an HTML link that links to the page that shows one specific book. So we've only got one PHP code, and this one PHP code can show any book we want. Now how does this PHP code know which book we want to show? It's because when we generated the links, we just attach which book we want to look at. How do we identify a book? Using the ID. So we've got a book with the ID 1, ID 2, ID 3, ID 4, ID 5, and so on. So basically I generate links, they link to the show 1 PHP file, and I just hand over in the URL something like question mark ID is 7 or whatever it may be. Yeah. Because I hand it over this way within the PHP file, we can access that value. It will be stored in $_get square brackets ID or whatever I call it. So we can then take this number and we can just run a database query. Select star from books where ID is $_get square brackets ID. Something along those lines. So automatically every book we list will have a link. It will link to another file, another PHP file, and if we click on it, we hand over the ID of the book. Here's a handout for you. Please take the handout. So we click on the link. We automatically hand over which book we want to link to, which book we want to show, and the code here will then take the information about this book from the database and will display it. Yeah. So as before, we list book title and author, but the new thing now is we link each book to another PHP page that will show the full details, and we pass the book ID. Yeah. Yeah, in this case, book ID is 1, or whatever it might be. Yeah. So this code is extremely similar to the code we looked at a few weeks ago when we started getting information from the database. Yeah, we connect to the database. We run the query. Yeah, show me all the books. We send it off. The results will be stored in $results. And now we've got a loop where one by one we convert the results from the database into a PHP array. And in this PHP array, yeah, we show the title of the book and the author. And here you can see the title of the book. I make it into a link, a href. And I link to another PHP file, and I hand over the ID of the book. Yeah, book ID, and here we store here we just echo the other ID. So for book 1 we link to database driven example 3, book ID is 1. For book 2 we link to book ID is 2. For book 8 we link to book ID is 8, and so on. Let's have a look at this example. Here we are. Well, one of you was very busy adding books to our database. Was it you again? No? Okay, somebody tried adding a lot of books. Okay, let's zoom in a bit. Okay, yeah. So like we've seen before, the title will be a link, and now look here at the bottom of the screen. Book ID is 5. Book ID is 6. Here at the bottom of the screen. Book ID is 4. Book ID is 3. Book ID is 1. Book ID is 2. So I've got my list. I click on the link. It will bring me to another file that will just display the details. You get that going. You're already in this 52 to 58% range for the main assignment. And the code for it is more or less in my handout here. As usual, you are allowed to use code from my handouts. So we want to create the details page. I wanted to look a bit nice, so what I did was I used Dreamweaver's design view to let's delete that. I used Dreamweaver's design view to create a few tables, and I then took the code. You've got Dreamweaver on the university machines. So this is just creating some sort of layout box. There's a table with different rows and different columns, and I just have some placeholder text in there. Let's have a look at it. So this is just some sort of table where I want to store my information in the future. So I created some sort of layout. Now all I need to do is I need to combine the code from the previous weeks, i.e. the code that displays one specific book, with the code that makes the layout happen. When we started creating the database, we had an example where we showed all the records from our database and where we showed one record from our database. So instead of just showing it as text, now I want to make it look a bit nicer. So here's a slightly nicer looking page. Here's the code that makes it happen. So now I just need to put my PHP code in there so that it looks nice. Like last time, we should use MySQL real escape string. Otherwise, people might smuggle code into your program that you didn't expect. So you can convert $_get book ID with MySQL real escape string into book ID. So this is where we get handed over the ID of the book we want to look at. And we can then just send the code off to give us one specific book. So here's an example where we got the whole thing to work. So here are the books. I click on a specific book. Here book ID is 3, for example. It's being handed over here. And now this program, this PHP file will go into the database and will just give me all the information about the specific book. Any questions? Okay. The whole thing gets slightly more complicated when we want to update a record. Yeah. So we want to update a record. It's the most complicated process we've done so far. Yeah. So first, we request a list of all the records from the server. The server gives us a list of all the records. Then we pick a specific record. And the server, we now make the server basically send us a form. When do you need this? If you want a first class mark, 74% or more, I expect you to do this kind of stuff. If you say, I don't need 74%, something in the 50s or 60s is good enough for me. Obviously, you don't have to do that. But it shouldn't come as a surprise that my suggestion to you is to try to aim as high as possible. Try to make your assignment as good as possible so that you get the highest mark. Okay, so we picked a specific book, or for the main assignment it could be a placement. We now get the server to show us some sort of record form. We've done forms long ago. Yeah. So we have a form, but this time we pre-fill the form with entries from the database. The user can then change those elements in the form, can submit the form, and then this updated record will go to the server. Yeah. And the server, of course, is busy talking to the database a lot. Let's go back to the beginning. In the beginning, I just want a list of all the records. What did the server do? The server asked the database, give me all the records. Yeah. The database sent all the records to the server that runs PHP. And the PHP code will then create an HTML file from the database records and will send them to our visitor. We pick one of them by clicking on it. We send a new request to the server. The server was selecting a single record from the database. The database finds it, sends it back to the server. The server will then take the information from this single record, will mix it with an HTML form, and will send this HTML form to our client. On our client machine, we fill in the form. We change entries. Once we press the submit button, it goes back to the server, and the server will take this information and will send the update command to the database. Yeah. So here's an example where I try to make this happen. Okay, here are all the books. I pick one. Yeah, and now instead of displaying it like we would display it to a visitor of the web page, we are displaying it as part of a form, and I can now go and change the price. Yeah, maybe the book used to be $10.49, Maybe now the book is $12.99. I click on update record and a problem here. Okay. So possibly, some of those characters it didn't like. If those kind of problems happen, you need to investigate again. You remember when we looked at the book It's Not Rocket Science? Did we create it in the end? Here we created it in the end. Yeah. And the whole thing didn't work because of this apostrophe. Yeah. So sometimes we've got to work around specific problems that can occur in PHP. And we need to find a workaround so that whatever we want to submit is allowed to be submitted. Yeah. Let's say this book is now £8.88. Okay, this worked. So obviously this book doesn't have whatever funny character was in the description that caused the problem. Yeah. So always work with the escape command, to escape all your commands. Okay, so I changed the price for how to sharpen pencils. Let's load the program. Let's load the book again, and you can see the price has now changed. Yeah. Okay. So if you get something like this working, an admin function, it's explained better in the handout for the main assignment, but if you get a good admin function working, you get a first-class mark. Okay, what else is missing? It all looks fine so far, but we don't have any pictures yet. For our books it would be nice if we had some pictures. For the placement, maybe you want to put a picture of the company in there. So the last bit that's missing, nearly the last bit that's missing. So let's have a look at how to work with files. If you want to send a file to the server, obviously you as the admin, you can do it with FTP. You could just send any picture you want with FileZilla to the server. But for your assignment, this placement database should be able to be managed by non-specialists. The people who want to manage the placement database, they don't know about FileZilla and FTP and things like that. They just want a web interface to manage your placement database. So you want to allow them to upload pictures to the placement system using a web page. And we can do that with an HTML form. There's a specific kind of field, type is file. We can enter that into a HTML form, and that will give us a browse button. You've all seen that before. And once we've got that browse button, we can upload pictures to the server. When we submit the form, the files will be uploaded. They will be accessed then from our PHP code to the $_files global. And because we upload files, there's certain bits of content we need to put into our form. So here's an example. There's also a maximum file size in bytes. I'm mentioning that because in previous years when students try this out and it doesn't work, it's usually because the pictures that were tried to upload were just too big. So here's an example. We want to upload a form. Here it's this enc type multi-part form data thing. This is where we send the file to. Maximum file size. Here's our value in bytes. So how big can this picture be? 50,000 bytes. 50 kilobytes. Is that big for a picture or not? Yeah, 50 kilobytes these days in 2018, that's quite small for a picture. So, but you need to think what kind of maximum file size do you allow. Here you don't want them to upload 10 megabyte pictures all the time, otherwise your server might be full quite soon. Okay, let's have a look at this in action. Yeah. Okay, and now I can upload a file. Browse. Pictures. There's nothing here. Let's upload a picture. And if I click send file, hopefully it will send the file. Okay. There was an error, so maybe the picture was too big. At the moment we only allow 50 kilobytes. We'd have to look into that. Okay. Once we uploaded the file, we need to deal with it. Yeah. You need to specify where you want to store the file in the end. You need to specify what the name of the file should be, and then you can basically move the file from that temporary space it exists in to the final destination. And once it worked, we usually give some sort of echo to confirm to the visitor of the web page that it worked. Yeah. So if you want to upload pictures, here you need to replace your user ID here. Yeah. And this is basically the path of the hard disk on the server, on BIM server 2. So if your username is adent, yeah, you'd have a space in the folder home called adent, and in adent there'd be a space called user ID, in this case adent.bimserver2.com. Only files in this folder will be accessible from the web. Yeah. And in there, obviously, you can have further subfolders. For example, a bookshop or student placements. You can have as many subfolders as you want. Yeah. You could have a folder then called student placements, and in the folder student placements, you have a folder called images. You can organize it however you want. So just to make the lines a bit shorter, I split things up. So here's the path. I store it in upload directory. Yeah. Obviously you could also put the path in directly here, but it gets more messy if you do that. And yeah, once we are finished, we move the file from our temporary space to wherever we want it. And either it worked, then we write file is valid and was successfully uploaded. Its name is, and then we print the name. Or if it didn't work, we just write there was an error. Yeah, maybe the folder didn't exist, maybe the file couldn't be uploaded, maybe the name was invalid. There could be many reasons. Okay. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we could automatically display a picture for a book or a picture for a placement? Yeah. Now, if we look at the books so far, we are identifying them by their ID. Yeah. When we were looking at the list of all the books and I wanted to pick a specific book, we identified that book by the ID. Now I clicked on that book, we handed over the ID, we ended up at that specific web page. Now, since we identify the books by the ID anyway, we could just use that ID as the name of the picture. So the book 7 has the picture 7.jpg. The book 9 has the picture 9.jpg. Makes our life very easy. Problem is you can only have one picture per book. But you know, it works, it's an easy solution. So we can rename the uploaded file to a file name of our choice. For example, whatever we want it. the book to be called, if it's book number 6. If you want to identify it as book number 6, we can call the picture 6.jpg, for example. Here's a form. I basically now ask, what should the uploaded file name be? Anything is possible. For example, I can manually type in 6.jpg. Or if we upload a picture by clicking on the book first, I can remember what the ID is and I can automatically fill the ID of the book in. Yeah. Yeah. Look, the picture didn't work because it has 85 kilobytes, and earlier I specified the maximum file size is 50 kilobytes. This is even bigger. So I don't have I don't have a small enough file at the moment. Maybe in screenshots? Nah, that's even bigger. Let's get a small file. Book cover. Let's go to Google. Book cover. Images. This is quite small. Let's try that. Save picture as pictures. Yeah, it's a PNG. This is small. So save picture as. So is that small enough? Let's have a look. Yeah, so hopefully this is just. Did we talk about binary numbers? Yeah, so we've got the problem that in binary numbers, a kilo is 2 to the power of 10, whereas in the decimal system a kilo is 10 to the power of 3. So I'm not sure exactly whether this is under the 50,000 mark or not, but let's try whether that's gonna work. Now I can say this is gonna be I don't know, is there book 6? Let's try 6.jpg. Yeah. Okay, and here's the book. Here's the book cover. Yeah, so that worked. Yeah. So I was dealing with the book. I was moving it to the final location. And yeah, I can then display the book. Let's go back to the here we are. Was there book 6? Yeah. Okay. So at the moment I just write, let's have a look at it. At the moment I just write 6.jpg. But now that there is a book called 6.jpg, I could obviously just replace that with the code. So instead of writing echo, book id.jpg, I could write echo imgsrc, the HTML tag that displays the book. So that way I can easily display the pictures for the books that have been uploaded. And I can check first, I can check, for example, does the file exist in HTML? If the file exists, display me the picture. If the file doesn't exist, display, sorry, no picture available. Yeah. So now we've got a system where we can display an overview of all the books. We can click on a book, we see the book, we see the book's picture. We can do all those things. Okay. Any question? Anything you like to ask me? No? Okay. So, let's go to the workshop. If you haven't booked your Viva with me, please book it later. Otherwise, I'll assign a slot for you. And you've got everything now to work on the assignment. Mm-hmm.